Thank you everyone for attending this new session on PIA webinar series. PIA, Particles in the Americas, is a joint initiative supported by the Asociación Argentina de Sedimentología, SINESTAD from Mexico, Escuela Politécnica Nacional from Ecuador, Instituto Argentino de Oceanografía, Instituto Geofísico del Perú, Mississippi State University from the United States, Universidad de la República from Uruguay, Universidad Federal do Espírito Santo from Brazil, Universidad del Norte from Colombia, and Sequoia. Today, we have our second session of this series of webinar by Dr. Jorge Abad, talking about morphodynamics of Amazonian rivers, flow structure, bedform, and platform evolution. Before introducing our lecture, I want to invite you to the next session next month, November 4, early in the morning by Edgardo Latruves. This session will be about continental sediment sources, sinks, and the human factor in large tropical river, the case of South America. Today, we have the honor to present the Professor Jorge Abad. Professor Jorge Abad received the bachelor degree in civil engineering from Universidad Nacional de Ingeniería from Lima, Peru. He received his master and PhD in civil and environmental engineering from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign from the United States. He was also a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Illinois. He was assistant professor in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering and the Department of Geology and Planetary Science at the University of Pittsburgh, United States. And Dr. Abad was the recipient of the Lawrence Strauss Prize, San Antonio Falls Laboratory. This award is given to the best doctoral thesis in hydraulic engineering, eco-hydraulic, or related field for the year the recipient dissertation was complete. This time was in 2008. Dr. Abad is the academic director of CREAR, Center for Research and Education of the Amazonian Rainforest, and he is also an advisor to the Peruvian Ministry of Foreign Affairs on border and Antarctic issues. He has plenty published papers about beds and sediment load transport and hydrodynamics in fluvial system. So today we have the pleasure to introduce to you to Professor Jorge Abad. Please, Jorge, the public is yours.
Thank you, Juan Camilo, and thank you for the organizers for inviting me to this presentation. What I'm going to show here is, it has been more than 10 years that we are working on the Amazon basin, and if I put all the names of the people involved on this research, there will be, no space for in the slide. So I just want to thank all my past former students and postdocs, and also the current ones at the university, at la Universidad de Ingeniería y Tecnología, UTEC. So after Marcelo Garcia, it's a big challenge to give a speech like this, but I'll try my best. I just want to start also thanking two agencies that have been supporting this. What I'm going to show today is Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, which basically is a lot of what you're going to see today based on the investment on this research and how, in the knowledge of the Amazonian rivers, and also USAID that is helping us with a project on illegal and informal mining operations and how it's related to rivers. So here, why the first question that we place is why rivers are important in the Amazon basin. You have in the left side here, you do have the Andes in red. And 60 million years ago, the drainage system was differently, but now all the rivers are going to Brazil, towards Brazil. You have all this drainage system with small rivers, large rivers, and different types of rivers and different concentration of sediments. So here, people, we have to learn that the Andes is connected to the Atlantic Ocean because of the river system. 90% of the sediment that goes to the Atlantic Ocean comes from the Andes. Fish, sediments and water just go downstream, but fish go downstream to the Atlantic Ocean and they come back. And not only when we have, let's say, high waters, not only there is a connectivity, longitudinal connectivity, but also there is a flat plane connectivity, lateral connectivity. If we talk about diversity, we can talk a lot about biodiversity, but also we can talk about diversity of different types of rivers, which create this diverse ecological system, which creates these hotspots of biodiversity, as you are going to see in Pacaya Emilia. People, depends on the rivers. There are several communities for transportation and fishery and other activities. You have to integrate to the river, and there is a culture. For indigenous communities, river means the basis of indigenous cosmology, cosmovision, and this is local people identities. So, but here we have seen the entire Amazon basin. Here what you're looking is the same extension, but with infrastructure that is being developed during the last decades and is still going on. This infrastructure are benefits or threats that are imposing into the Amazon basin. In the left side, you can see in circles the hydropower dams. Depending on the megawatts, the circle gets, the diameter gets bigger or not. And you can see a lot of hydropower dams in Brazil, in the southern part of Brazil, but also in the Peruvian side, right there in the Andes, okay, where all the sediments are being produced. And also there are some oil leases, production, exploration, and you can see most of the Peruvian Amazon is being explored or producing oil during these last decades. And in yellow, you can see deforestation patterns everywhere in Brazil and the southern part, and also in Peru. There is oil palm. There is other activities like illegal mining as well that are producing deforestation. And look at the colors, the white and red colors. These lines that are going from Brazil all the way to Peru, Colombia, these are the waterways. And pay attention to that, because later we are going to talk about it. The idea is to connect by using the rivers, different countries in the continent. So if we talk about water, the left image will show you, this is in percentage. This is a nice picture of Michael Goulding of the Smithsonian Atlas of the Amazon, percentage of how much each river contributes to assuming 100% reaches to the Atlantic Ocean. 22 from Peru, around 15 from the Madeira, that comes also from Peru and Bolivia. Let's talk about the flow rate of the Amazon. Is around 12 times the Mississippi, just to put in perspective. However, in sediments, in the right figure, we don't have percentage. We don't have numbers. We don't have accuracy in, estimations on these values, because this is a variable that has been forgotten many times and has been not measured, not monitored at the same amount of times, or the same times as the water. So just remember, water and sediment goes from the Andes to the Atlantic Oceans, but we don't know much about how much sediments are being transported from the Andes all the way to Guyana, Suriname. Basically, there is a connectivity from Andes to Atlantic Ocean. Let me take you to a trip. This is where the Maranon River starts, one of the main tributaries of the Amazon River. You have a glacier. This is a glacier lake. Not much about, sediments here. Concentration is very low. Even though in glaciers you have also sediment coming out from the formations. And this is around 4,000 meters. Right here, you are going down, and it's around 3,000 meters. This is the same river, but you start looking at the hills. There is some gravel material on the bottom of the river. You can see bars. You can see some riffles and some pools. A little bit downstream, this is 500 meters above the sea level. You have a complex. Here in the Maranon with sediments, by fine sediments in suspension. You have a tributary that comes with less concentration of sediments. However, the bed is coarser. You can see drastic changes here, coarse material, fine material, and this is a confluence along the Maranon River. This is the last crossing of the Andes. This is the Pongo Mancerriche. This is around 250 meters above the sea level. After here, you start the lowland. Basically, most of the time we relay the Amazon from here downstream all the way to Brazil. This is a canyon. This is the crossing the Andes, and this is a very complex system because this is also serves as a transition of the sediments coming from the upper regions all the way to the lower regions. Downstream, you don't find much gravel. You don't find big rocks as it is upstream. What I'm going to talk today in the presentation, I'm not going to talk the upper. We also are doing a lot of work in the upper. I'm going to concentrate only on the lower Amazon basin. And in the lower Amazon basin, we do find this kind of rivers, this scenario. You have, the floodplain widen, you have rivers and vegetation. When the river moves, there is a succession of vegetation. This is the confluence of the Maranon and Huallaga rivers. This is around 130 meters above the sea level. Okay, so in the lower Amazon, you do have two types of rivers. In the left, meandering means single thread channels. They do migrate a lot. In the right, you have Anabranching rivers. They do have multiple channels. They do migrate less than the meandering rivers. And why this is the case? The Anabranching rivers, they do have more water, more sediments. However, because you cannot carry that amount of sediments, you have to deposit, build these islands, divide one single thread channel into multiple channels. That's why we have multiple channels in the Anabranching system. So we were approaching these two different types of rivers using three methodologies. One, remote sensing, two, field measurements, and three, mathematical modeling. Number one, we have been for several years developing this morphometrics. We have several papers on this, trying to characterize these meandering shapes, meandering patterns. And we just finished a toolbox. This is done in MATLAB. I'll invite you to use it. It's called MSTAT. This is basically a toolbox that helps us to characterize any meandering river. Also, you can characterize the migration of the river, and also you can characterize, the dominant wavelengths and amplitudes, all kinds of things. So the second methodology is field measurements. Here we do, we have the river. The first thing we measure is the water unit. Basically, as the ADCP here movie, you can see here, we go perpendicular to the cross section. We measure course or higher velocity, lower velocity, etc. We do have this in all the rivers. Then the second thing we measure is the bed morphology. As the movie down there in the right bottom, you can see this is an experiment. The particles moving and they are getting together and moving as a dune. Also, we do map using multi-beam sonar. We do map the bottom of the river. And the third is the sediments. Basically, in a cross-section, given cross-section here, you have an ADCP measurement. We do, then we do divide, different verticals and different points along each vertical. And we want to know what is the sediment concentration. We want to know what is the sediment particle size distribution in the cross-section. So that's the way we are approaching in the true field measurement. And from 2017, we have been measuring basically in the Ucayali River here, Ucayali River, the Huallaga River, the Maranon River, and then further downstream into the Amazon River. I'm not going to show you the detail here, but if you want to know where we measure how many times, for example, the blue ones, the blue points show you where we measure water, sediment, and the geomorphology, the bed geomorphology. In pink is water and sediments, and in green is water, ADCP measurements, and so on. So we have been collecting all this kind of data with all these research assistants. And the third methodology is through numerical modeling. Okay, this is a work in collaboration with EDF, USDA, and UNAM that has been published with our collaborator, where we develop a nonlinear model, which basically you have to test it. Sometimes it's, when you develop a model, you can test it with a field measurement, but we also did something interesting. There is a condition in meanders when the wave number is below this K max number. You can find the details on Johannes and Parker 1985. At perturbation, here you have a straight channel and you have one perturbation, which is this bend. This is the initial perturbation. That perturbation will grow. And you can see here, I hope you can see the movie, that one single perturbation will trigger different oscillations. So it's basically meander growth. There is another condition where the wave number is above that wave K max, and what you find is the same perturbation will not grow. What it will do here, the width, the channel width will oscillate, and you don't have, the formation of new meanders. This is, both conditions sometimes are happening in the field. And look into these pictures in the right. When meanders grow, they have to evolve, migrate, cut off, and the width was almost uniform. How beautiful the subtle images. However, when these meanders, they start to widening and shortening or narrowing, basically, you do have, like the Ucayali River, sometimes widening and sometimes narrowing. So these two conditions are inherent in meandering rivers. So again, I'm going to show you these four rivers, the Ucayali, here, from Atalaya to Nauta, Yurimaguas from the Huallaga from Yurimaguas to Lagunas, Maranon from Borja to Nauta, and the Amazon from Nauta to the boundary with Colombia and Brazil, in Leticia, Tabatinga, and Santa Rosa. Huallaga and Ucayali are meandering, Maranon and Amazon are Anabranching. That's why we are going to use 2 and 2. Long time ago, it's almost more than 10 years, with Marcelo, we have done some experiments in Illinois, and this was an experimental setup with 3 different bends. Flow, in this case, goes from left to right, and we use a Kinoshita meandering channel. This is a very, it's a laboratory experiment. What we found in these experiments is very, very interesting. You look here, we are going to go in one of the bends, cross-section 10, cross-section 15, cross-section 20. Each cross-section is 1 meter apart. And you can see here in cross-section 10, you are coming from the left, and you have 2 secondary cells rotating, right? Just put your eyes on the arrows, and 2 secondary cells rotating. Downstream, cross-section 11, you only have one cell. Cross-section 12, the same. Cross-section 13, one very nice, well-developed secondary flow. This is, like the textbook, very nice secondary flow. Cross-section 14, you change the curvature of the river, of the channel. And you have, again, that small, counterclockwise secondary cell, the black one. And then farther downstream, the black one kind of destroys the previous one. So this interaction of creation of secondary cells, depending on the local curvature, has been going on the whole river. So you can see from meander to meander, you have these secondary cells. And also, during those experiments back in Illinois, we have also put sediments and observe how the bedfoms were moving. And here a movie, you will see every hour, you can see different colors moving. Red colors are higher elevation, blue colors, lower elevation. Basically, these are large dunes that are migrating along the meandering channel, okay? And here there is a profile of time, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, and you can see very nice dunes migrating every hour in this channel. So this was back on the days, and in February we went to El Tigre. This is the Rio Tigre that is a tributary of the Maranon, and here is Gary Parker and Kensuke and Guo here. They came to visit us. This is not the boats that we use, but Gary, he wanted to use them and go around. And what we did is we found a very interesting meander, as you can see in the Rio Tigre. We did all the morphology. I'm not going to discuss here. I'm only going to show you a part of the measurement, which is going to be right here. We have a bend coming here, and then a different bend, in the opposite direction. And let's look at the flow structure. Oh, first, let's look at the morphology. So this is we have done multi-beam in all the areas, and we also observe some bedforms moving. But let's look at the flow structure. Here you have cross-section 8, 9. This is going downstream, and you have a preferential rotation of the flow, and then cross-section 14, 15, you change the secondary cell. And let's look at the arrows here. So cross-section 8, you can see, follow me, you are rotating like this, and then you are starting cross-section 15 or cross-section 16, rotate to the opposite side. So this is interesting because for the first time we can see, at least in this river, I'm not saying that this is not done in other places, but here in this river we have two bends of different rotations of secondary cells, and we can map out very interesting here. This is good for example, for validating high resolution numerical models. So number one, this is the Meandering River. This is the Huallaga River from Yurimaguas to Lagunas, and the colors are showing you, the year from 1986 all the way to 2019 in blue. Just put your attention on two sides. Progreso, there is a cutoff going on, and Santa Cruz, in 2018, there was a cutoff. So this is a very active river because you can also see paleo channels or oxbow lakes that has been left, for several hundred of years or thousands of years. So this is Progreso down here. It's getting together these two parts of the bend, and Santa Cruz, it's already collapsed and the water just keeps going straight. The same river, let's look at the flow structure. This is cross-section 6, right here. Flow goes from left to right, and you can see here there is a rotation. There is a rotation there. The outer bank, it's deeper. The inner bank, there is all the deposition happening there. And in Progreso, you have cross-section 7 and 9. These two parts of the bend are getting together. And you can see the rotation coming here, like this. So in 2017, there was 500 meters apart. Now they are less than 200 meters. And in February, when we went there, there was already a channel connecting these two parts of the bend. So we expect now that this is already maybe getting under cutoff conditions. So very active. Santa Cruz, this is the one I told you that in 2018, you do have, look at here, there, already going through cutoff. And this is a very active. Look at the Oxbow Lake next to it. There's a very, very interesting Oxbow Lake going on here. So this is full of activity that we are trying to understand, how often these rivers produce cutoff, and what are the impacts of having cutoffs in this river. So one of the impacts is, okay, this is Santa Cruz. We have measured bedforms in cross-section in the longitudinal profile 5. Here, this is before the cutoff. Cross-section 7 or longitudinal profile 7 is downstream of the cutoff. And just look at these two. We have been in the field one day and repeated the same measurement, along the same profile the next day. So day one is in blue, day 2 is in orange, and you can really nice see, bedforms moving from day 1 to day 2. In profile number 6, however, this is in the area where cutoff is happening and the water is just going through, you don't see too many bedforms. And, they are basically, the sediment transport is decaying because water and sediment, or if sediment gets to that part of the bend, is going to be deposited. So just to give you numbers, in profile 5 and 7, the transport, bedload transport is around 57 and 53 tons per meter per day. This river is around 400, 500 meters width. So you can give the number of how much sediment transport is going on the bed per day. However, in profile 6, it's only 3.3 tons per meter per day. So quantity is still going, some water and sediments are getting through. But in the next years, this is going to be an abandoned channel. So it's going to be 0. So we have developed a conceptual model for net cutoff. Here you can see there is a planform view 1A, B, 2, longitudinal from 8B, it's LI, the length. And also you can see in a profile view 1A, B, 2. What happens if there is a cutoff between A and B? What's going to happen is there is going to be an increase of the slope, of the local slope, and the river will try to recover the equilibrium SE slope. So it's going to say, you know, I have to recover my slope. How do I do it? And the river, what it'll do is it's going to send an erosive wave upstream and a depositional wave downstream. And the depositional wave, it means more migration rates in the floodplain. Erosional wave, it means you have to incise the bottom of the river. So we have developed this numerical model, Z, a former student, now is working with Marcelo. He has developed this morphodynamic model, and you can see there is a cutoff, and there is a, the propagation of the bed is going towards upstream. Look at the colors. Red is higher elevation, white is lower elevation. There is a propagation of incision going upstream. So the model has been captured in this process. And here, just for the ones that do numerical model, we are using very fine mesh in the along the river and coarse mesh in the floodplain. And then, we do some dynamic meshing when we track the river. This is in a planform view. The vectors used to go around the river, around the bend. Now we just straight. Let's play again. There we go. Now let's go straight. So as you can see, the amount of sediment along the Oxbow Lake, or that part of the river that is being abandoned, is decreasing in size. So we apply it for the Ucayali River. In the left figure, you have the valleys in shaded color, and in blue color you have the current river, basically in 2017, and you do also have different colors like orange, green, yellow. Those are paleo channels. We reconstructed the area, and you can see we don't have dating on these sites. We still need to do some dating on this, but you do see that the Ucayali River has been migrating along this valley. And we use the model. We started in 2013. You can see the model here. This is the flow vectors. 2 meters per second is around this pink color, and 0 is the blue color. And you can see from 2013, 15, 14, 17, we capture how this bend has been collapsing, and you have the production of the Oxbow Lake. And there is a water in the Oxbow Lake. So it's an Oxbow Lake. It's not a paleo channel that has no water. So we validate the model using this natural scale, very migratory river, Ucayali River. So I show you how processes in Meandering River are. Now let me show you what's the difference for Anabranching River. But just remember, Meandering rivers, they do migrate, they go under cutoff, and they do migrate again. So there's a circle, migration, cutoff, migration, cutoff. That's the equilibrium condition for Meandering River. For Anabranching rivers, this is the Peruvian Amazon River, from Nauta to Leticia, Tabatinga, Santa Rosa. Just pay attention to these circles, yellow color. I'm circling each Anabranching structure, which means part of the river that has more than one channel, or that has islands. So basically, the Anabranching structures. And Adrian Garcia, he did this analysis and got 26 kilometers. After 26 kilometers, the Peruvian Amazon River needs to divide or needs to build islands. This is a very interesting concept because it seems the river, the largest river in the world, needs, at least the Peruvian side, certain length scale for equilibrium conditions. So here there is rare Oxbow lakes. There are rare, not the ones like neck cutoff produced, these different processes. The river has to split, they have to build bars, and then the vegetation grows, they have to stay as islands. There is no net cutoff in this system. I mean, rarely, there are some, but I will say the main equilibrium process is building islands and dividing and having multi-channel systems. This is with Christian Frias in 2015. One of my former students, we did this analysis in one of these bends, which is the one in the border with Colombia and Brazil. And you can see here, this is in the left figure, this is the bed elevation. These channels, LA2, if you want to go into that channel, you have to come the flow goes from the top to the bottom. You have to jump, you have to go in the ramp, and then stay, and then go down if you want back to the river. So they are elevated channels. And most of the water is going towards LS80. As you can see, there's a deeper channel here. And when we did the simulation, in the right side, you also see red colors, the high core velocities going through the right channel, the lateral channel, or the main channel now. So, however, time to time, these secondary channels, the small ones, become the main channel. So there is a different processes. It's not, migration, cutoff. You won't find those processes right here. However, we also have, the birthplace of the Amazon River. So the Amazon River starts with a confluence of the Maranon, Ucayali, and I told you the Maranon is Anabranching. They don't migrate as high rates as the Ucayali. The Ucayali migrates, and you can see these payload channels or traces where the Ucayali has been going everywhere. So the confluence point is dominated by the meandering process, and this is what Leo Guerrero is trying to understand. So let me show you just a few measurements on this side that will be very interesting to understand. Here, you are coming through the Ucayali River. This is the last cross section until you reach the confluence. You can see here, the river is coming here. You have a secondary flow like this arriving close to the confluence. And then from the last cross section in the Maranon, because of the island that is upstream, you do have two cross sections, two secondary cells, because each of these channels upstream are producing their own secondary cells. Farther downstream, this is the first cross section that we measure where these two rivers meet. Meandering and Anabranching, a very complex system, and you do have these two secondary cells. The clockwise rotation keeps like this. The counterclockwise from the Ucayali is reinforced because also you do have, you encounter the flow from the Maranon, and you do have this very nice secondary cell. However, farther downstream, around 4, that is just, you can tell this is the cross section in the Amazon River. You are forgetting a little bit about the flow on the confluence. So here you only have one secondary cell and widening of the channel because you have contribution from water, sediment. The river is trying to adjust to a new channel width. So what I showed today, from remote sensing, measurements, and modeling, I will invite you to go to this website, dancingrivers.com, that we are putting all the data. We will put all the data there. So for these 4 rivers and many others that we are working, we do have statistics, graphs, and the data. You will be able to download the data after we publish the paper. We'll upload the data. That's the way that we are going to share. And we invite you to also to bring the data and put it here. We recognize your authorship, but the idea is to share data among scientists. So I will keep going and try to finish my presentation with some questions. Question number 1 is, we have different sediment processes like washload, suspended sediments, and bedload. So what's the percentage, at least in these Peruvian Amazonian rivers? For washload, you can see the arrow is much bigger. There, I will guess, 80% of the total load of sediments. Suspended sediments, the ones that are resuspended and deposited, so they may be around 15, 18%. And bedload that are moving just on near the bed as bedfoms and rolling or other processes, a smaller percentage. And you can see a very, like a textbook velocity profile. Also, there is a sediment size distribution, from very fine in the surface to very coarse or at least sand material on the bottom, at least in the lower Amazon basin. The fine sediments are very well mixed in the water column. And most of the time, when we do sediment measurements, we just take water from the surface, and that's the one we calculate the concentration, and then we estimate how much sediments are going through the river. For fine sediments, that will be okay. However, when you do have sand, you do have a stratification, you do have this Rausen profile, and you do have more concentration of sediments near the bottom, okay? And that's what we measured. I'm just showing you here one of the, this is the Ucayali River, where it divides into the Puinagua. This is near Pacaya Samiria, and then comes back again and keeps going as the Ucayali River. We measured in 7 cross-sections here. Just briefly, I'm going to state that, in colors, the yellow color is the washload. So, and you can see very high percentage all the way up to 84%. From 66%, okay? And in brown color is the one on the suspension, sand material that suspended and deposited. So, and 3%, sometimes a little bit more or less, you have the bed low moving just there along the bottom of the river. So, in terms of who is responsible for the bed morphology or the morphology of rivers, we can say washload, they just have different functions. They don't interact with the bottom of the river. They do interact with the floodplain. When you have flooding, you do inundate and deposit all these fine sediments with nutrients, and that's how the biodiversity keeps in the place. However, if you add suspended sediment plus bedload sediment, those around 20%, those are the ones responsible for the morphology of the river. And I said this before, if you magically clean the washload, maybe the morphology of the river won't be so different, okay? So question number 2 is, why is it important to have meandering or Anabranching? Does it matter for biodiversity or just, these are two different types of rivers? Here, I invite you, if you didn't come to Peru and didn't go to the Amazon basin, I'll invite you to go to Pacaya Samiria. You have the Maranon, Ucayali, the Amazon starts right here, and in white lines, you do have the Pacaya and Samiria rivers. Okay, this is a very nice wetland in the world, most of the most well-known wetlands for biodiversity. So if we reconstruct the paleochannels that have been in this area, you can see here, these are the modern paleochannels of the Ucayali River. In cyan color or light blue, you can see a lot of channels everywhere near the Ucayali River. If we go back a little bit more in time and reconstruct the paleochannels inside of the Pacaya Samiria, in the yellow colors, you do find similar size of meanders, which means the Ucayali has been not only around, but it has been everywhere in the Pacaya Samiria. So Ucayali is the responsible. Remember I was telling you, the Ucayali is the one dominating the confluence with the Maranon, where the Amazon starts. Well, it seems the Ucayali has been everywhere, and the confluence has been maybe everywhere. We don't know when, inside of Pacaya Samiria. So, and why is this important? Here, this is a fish production from the regional government of Loreto, and just put your eyes the circles, the orange circles. The larger the diameter of the circle is the more fish production from 2014 to 2017. And just look at the colors and where they are located. There is more fish production along the Ucayali compared to the Maranon. And even people living in the Maranon, they go around the confluence and come into the Ucayali because you have more oxboles, you do have more paleochannels, connectivity, so it's more productive for fish. However, the Maranon, which is an Anabranching, is less. So that's why it's important to understand these river systems and their importance for biodiversity. So I told you the Ucayali River is the one responsible for creating this mess, this complex system, these geomorphological structures in the Pagayasam area. But not only that, that every year when you have high flows in these two large river systems, flow comes into Pagayasam area with nutrients, with minerals, with sediments. And then when the water recedes, basically lowers down, there is water going back to the river. But all the good things, the nutrients, stay in Pagayasam area. That's why not only the river, creates morphology, but also creates inundation, flooding, and that's helping to keep the Pagayasam area in place. Question number 3. How important is the river science that we have shown today for development of infrastructure? So here I'm going to just use one example, which is Hidrovia Amazonica. That I remember I told you these white and red colors. There was a line connecting Peru, Brazil, Colombia. So now Peru has signed 2017 a contract for 20 years to develop this Hidrovia Amazonica, Brazil, Peru. Malpaso here means region or areas of dredging areas, okay? And in the right view, you can see this is a typical water surface elevation from January to December, or 1 whole year. And there are times when the water is so high that you don't need to think about dredging. And most of the rivers here, 10 months of the 12 months, you don't need to think about dredging, which basically you are allowing all the vessels and large vessels from Brazil going through Peru, no big deal. However, there are maybe 2 to 3 months in the year where you are concerned about, the water depth is not enough. In this case, it's 8 feet or 2.44 meters, and you have to dredge, and you have, at least in this navigation channel of 60 meters, you have to dredge. Remember, the channel width in the Maranon, Ucayali, they are more than 500 meters, so they are trying to dredge a region of 60 meters, but they are trying to modify the segments at the bottom of the river. And why is this important river science for this? The pink colors in this map on the left, where we have shown, this is when Peru signed the contract with the company, Cohidro, they signed the contract, using previous studies, considering 13 dredging areas. And the environmental impact assessment study has been done using this 13. However, there is along the same time, also done by the company, they developed this engineering detail assessment study, and they found 23 dredging areas. And you can see here from 13 to 23 is any number, basically. You are not understanding, you do not understand why these malpasos or dredging areas are happening, and you are starting a project where you are going to dredge. So we were, showing all our observations to the proper channels in the Peruvian government and try to make concerns about, you have to understand the river before you try to intervene. So 2 conclusions from that project is, at least from our observations, they do not consider the rivers are dynamic, like the figure on the left. This is the Ucayali River, different years migrating. They did not consider this river dynamics. They did not consider measurements of sediments, in here, bedload and bed suspended load, those are the ones important. Maybe the washload is not as important as it is, because you're not going to dredge fine sediments. So they did not consider, and we cannot keep going with projects like they do not understand river systems. Question number 4. In the southern part of Peru, where illegal informal mining are happening, we do have deforestation. You have to, long time ago, they just used to dredge into the river. But the Navy came and they destroyed all these dredging operations. And they said, okay, the river, somehow they were academic, and they said, the river has been hundreds of years down there in the floodplain, to the left, to the right. Why do we need to bother dredging on the river? Let's go to the floodplain, destroy the forest, and keep, getting the gold. And they use mercury for extracting the gold. And most of the concern in this area has been related to mercury, how much contamination it's happening. However, we went to a different point of view, and USA has helped us to do this project, and we are looking how is the impact of a lot of sediment from deforestation, runoff and bring more sediment are going to the river. Basically, this is like a sink of all the sediments from the floodplain, and you can look at the figure here. The colors have been changed, and the question is, what's going on with the rivers now? So if you can carry out that kind of sediment. So we did some paleochannel recognition here. It seems also the paleochannels are related to deforested areas. So I'm not going to talk about that today, but it's interesting. Here in 2017, we went to the area. This is the confluence of the Colorado River. Let me show you what is the Colorado here. Colorado is the one here in the left. This is Waipetu. This is the largest deforested areas. This is Inambari, and this is the Madre Dios river that goes to Madeira. So this is the Colorado confluence with the Madre Dios, and you can see just the colors, the high concentrated, river that is coming into the Madre Dios river. And you are observing now changes on the morphology, bars, islands, and the other movie is the confluence between the Inambari and the Madre Dios River. The same, different colors in the suspended sediments, showing you different concentrations. And we for this talk, I'm going to show you just one piece of evidence that you have a laboratory experiment going on here. This is 1984 and 2018. The same area, and we're just going to zoom in into the Pukiri River. Pukiri River in 1984 was a meandering channel. 2018, you can see it's a multi-channel system. It's kind of Anabranching, it's kind of braided, but it's a multi-channel system. So here, water didn't change much. Precipitation, I hope it didn't oscillate huge. But here, what happened is more sediments are going into the river, and you are producing this multi-channel system. So there is a threshold that we're trying to analyze here. There is a threshold when you go from meandering all the way to a multi-channel system. And the question is what is the critical point in the sediment load to change the DNA of the river? Here, we have done a lot of measurements, and with all these students that are very talented at UTEC. But when we go to the field, I told you at the beginning, we interact with the people around it, the communities, and here we are with Ander Ordóñez from the Tupac Amaru community. This is in the left picture when after 5 a.m. we did some fishing in the Maranon, and we are having our breakfast. And in the right with Mariana Montoya and Ander, trying to use the microscope from the cell phone and trying to understand sediment particles and trying to understand how they develop agriculture and other activities on the bars on the island. So just to finish, we learned a lot from the science, but we did also learn a lot from the people. And we created to go to historiasdelrio.com. We have more than 120 stories, river stories, from kids, scientists, indigenous people, authorities, and you can write your own story too. Please, I invite you to do it. Here we have 8 people, Rinaldo from the local government, Zoila, she is an indigenous leader, Marco, he is the director of the CENAMI, which is the equivalent as the USGS in the United States, Katia, also she's from the local government. Rita, she's a Kukama communicator. Kukama is an indigenous community that lives around, several places, but around the Maranon. Brian is one of our researchers. Bruno and Mari, they were the winners of a contest we organized for high school and primary school. And they came to our university to present the river story. So look at these 8 people, different ages, gender, etc., and look at the statements they have in the river stories. You have to do an adequate river management. We have to protect our rivers. They are complex. They have this connection, spiritually connection. We have the main ecosystems to support our region. We have to understand better. Bruno says, I love fishing with my dad. Mari says, I promised my grandfather I would save the river. But in every statement, rivers are the key word. So again, I'll invite you to write your own story. And with that, I just want to thank, this is part of my group. Some others just left, some others are maybe coming also in the future. And with that, I will leave you if you have any questions. And thank you so much for organizing this presentation and for inviting me. Thank you.
Well, Jorge, thank you very much for this nice presentation, highlighting the links and feedback between hydrodynamics, sediment properties, and even vegetation in fluvial geomorphology. We have a couple of questions. So the first question is from Shai Lee from Urbana, Illinois. Thanks for the great talk. Is the existence of vegetation necessary for river meandering?
Good question. This question has been going on everywhere because of the vegetation. What adds to the floodplain is cohesion, and several experiments like Christian Broderick and others in Berkeley, they have used alfalfa in the floodplain to produce meanders. In the laboratory scale, and some people, have used other different plants and etc. in the flume. What I will say is the opposite, maybe, not the opposite. It's different. In the big rivers, vegetation roots are just 1 meter, and the top 1 meter, and the river is maybe 20, 30 meters deep. So vegetation doesn't. I mean, I will say the vegetation plays other functions here. Maybe this runoff with more sediments into the river, they stop that. But for that, in the context of this laboratory experiment, they don't play that role of adding cohesion to the floodplain, because they just the 20 meters and 1 meter here, the river even doesn't realize that vegetation is there. However, when the river migrates, these trees fall down. There is when you might have, some sort of feedback from the vegetation. But for meandering, at least in the Amazonian River, I will say not as we expected from laboratory experiments. However, for Anabranching rivers, maybe that was not the question, but I can use that. When you have the emergence of a bar and vegetation grows fast, that will fix the bar and try to have an island. There is where you will have an impact of vegetation. I hope I did answer your question. Juan, I think your mic.
Yeah, thank you. It usually happens to me. In the same perspective, there is a question from Michelle Melendez. Hello from Urbana, Illinois as well. What is the role of woody debris in shaping Amazon rivers?
That's an interesting question because, again, there are a lot of woody debris going through these rivers, and for navigation, they are very, 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 directly impacted. For the morphology of rivers, they do play a role when they are stick on the bottom of the river, and you do create some local geomorphic structures, and also when there is a lot of, let's say, geotechnical failure of the bank, and they have like cluster of trees falling down, you do have an impact there. You may reduce the amount of river migration. You may have that, but the question is for how long. The river it's so intelligent that will say, okay, I'm stopping here, I have to migrate somewhere else. That's what's happening. Or also, what's going to happen is the trees are going to remove in the next flood event. So those questions are still, very interesting to answer here. And Michelle, I invite her to do that. That would be interesting.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Gabriel Cordero from Brasilia. He's asking about the level of energy comparing the Anabranching River and Anamostosset type river. Which of those types has the low level of energy?
Okay, if you look at this, I don't recall, maybe Bryce, no, Bryce was meandering. There has been several phase diagrams for meandering, straight channels, and arranging, anastomosins, braided. Usually, in at least in the Peruvian side, we don't have more of these anastomosin type of rivers. Maybe the one that is in Brazil, in the Rio Negro, maybe that's kind of like that, but in the Peruvian side, we do have more anabranchings. They do tend, if you read a paper by Edgardo Latruese, they do tend having a little bit less slopes than the meandering rivers. If you compare meandering, we don't have, we don't have those anastomosin type of textbooks at least in the Peruvian side. We don't have those, which I cannot tell you if, a comparison that we did, but usually they are very low slopes that you require to have this braided. However, in braided systems, you do have like the like in Italy, the tagliamento. You do have there's a different, more slopes are needed to produce systems. And braided systems are more temporal, which you will have bars, which will next year will be the channel will be somewhere else. You do have more variability on the channel systems. Here, no, you will have this for decades, these multi-channel systems, and that's different. So I for the Amazonian part where we have a study, we don't have those comparisons. We don't have because we usually don't find those. So, but it will be great, maybe to compare with the same discharge, with the same geology, with the same discharge of water and sediment, compared to other systems where we do find anastomosin conditions. So, but that's something we didn't do it.
Okay, Jorge, thanks. We have time for more questions. In the meantime, I have one from mine. You just talk about the Hydroway, which is an old project who wants the integration and the massive project, not only the integration between Colombia, Peru, and Brazil, but with also connecting with the Paraná. You just tell us about the lack of sound studies about sediment properties, sediment amount, sediment load, bed load. This project is considering human intervention in the course of the river of the Amazon, and if they are considering that, what would be the effect when they are ignoring the sediment dynamics?
That's a very good question. The first thing we told the Moore Foundation is that there was no baseline. We have different agencies in Peru that measure water. Sediments, there are some people that measure, again, the French, the IRD people, they do have some data on surface sediments. But I will say, I will maybe get in trouble here, but I will say that not many people have paid attention to the bedload sediments, which is basically the one that creates the morphology of the river. And that's the one that are going to dredge. So yes, the contract says that you're going to dredge the river. You're going to build this navigation channel for 20 years. You have to maintain it. The problem is there is no evidence that they can tell you, okay, you have to dredge every year, every 2 years. And how often do you need to dredge every year? Because the river will bring this amount of sediment, and maybe whatever you dredge day number 1, and maybe in a month, this is already covered in 3 weeks. And also, they are not telling you what is going to be the impact of this removal of sediments. And that's very important, because if you don't understand the river, how it moves, you are going to maybe produce a different pattern that is not natural pattern. And why do I say that? Remember in the Huallaga River, I show you two two cutoffs, the Progreso and Santa Cruz. I show you that because upstream of those two cutoffs, that's the location of the dredging areas. When there is these two cutoffs, you might not need to dredge upstream because remember that conceptual model I built, you're going to have incision going upstream, an erosion wave going upstream. So maybe the river will tell you don't need to dredge. Now you might need to start dredging downstream because you do have this depositional wave, more migration, and you might need to dredge downstream. So you can see here that they don't know, the dynamics of the river, and they are going just to dredge wherever they can do measurements and okay, this is the water level, the water depth is less than 8 feet, let's dredge. And that's not the way that we should do because we don't. Our rivers, and I'm also getting trouble with other colleagues around the world, but our rivers are, huge in biodiversity. They do, in the Amazon basin, we do have, if we kind of quantified in amount of dollars, each kilometer of the river, maybe that's the most expensive kilometer in the world. So that's I would say, we need to do more river science on here.
Okay, Jorge. So we have two more questions. One of these is related that you just said. Is from Roberto Fernandez.
All right.
When does your group expect to give a proper estimate for total sediment loads in the Amazon basin?
Roberto,
we are many interested in that question.
Roberto, it's we can give. I think we are close. By the end of this year, we can give at least from data 2-3 years data. We can give estimates in these 4 rivers in the Peruvian Amazon. The idea is to continue these measurements in the whole Amazon basin. There are some colleagues who measure in Brazil and Colombia as well. The idea is to try to collapse this data or to keep going with measurements, but we have to keep with the methodology. It's not, sometimes as scientists, when we see an EDCP analysis or, like dune migration, the tracking of the dune migration, and extract values for sediment load from there, there are some differences because you can use different methodologies. So we have to standardize the methodology, and after that, I will say the idea is to expand this estimation for the entire Amazon. However, and also I'm going to get in trouble here. In the whole Amazon basin, Peru has the most dynamic rivers. Because, I'm saying the ones that are closer to the Andes, because those are the ones in the transition. You have Meandering, you have Anabranching, you have all kind of processes here. So diversity of rivers are higher in the going towards the Amazon. If we do have good estimation, we can extrapolate to the other regions. Again, with the complication that also happens in those regions, like in Brazil, the Anabranching system, the floodplain is not very well developed. You have other complications there. But at least in terms of sediment removal from the rivers, we can get estimations by the end of the year in these 4 rivers.
Okay, good. We are waiting for that. So the final question coming from Tanya Shukla. Hello. In case of a spatial transition between Anabranching and Meandering ridges, how might the process, flow structure, sediment characteristics change across that interface?
Tanya, this is an interesting question. You know what? I will invite you to look at our paper in 2015 with Christian Frias, where we did comparison of 2 Anabranching structures. In the Peruvian side, we have around 24 Anabranching structures. Okay, that's if you keep going to Brazil, you will have more and more. But in those 24, we pick 2 of them. One is the Muyuy and the Santa Rosa Leticia Anabranching structure. And why did we pick those 2? Is because one has higher sinuosity on the main channel, and the other one low sinuosity in the main channel. And they have multiple channels, so we compare. And I'll invite you to read. We have flow measurements, sediment estimation. We do have, even we calibrated a model to extract more variables. Now, Adrian came, and went above and said, there is a special scale, 26 kilometers. The question, why every 26 kilometers has to do with the interaction of flow, sediment, and bed morphology, which still, we don't know. So that's also very interesting. We have measurements now in the Maranon. We didn't do the complete analysis, but we are going towards trying to answer that. But we do have now analysis on, Anabranching structures before, after, and so on. And it's an interesting question that still is open, I will say.
Okay, Jorge, thank you. The last question comes from Gerardo Perillo. Hi, Jorge. Nice seeing you again. This is the question. In meanders, Untitled channels tend to have a deep score hole at the apex, similar to those you can find at tributary junctions. Are they observed in river meanders?
Good. That's a fantastic question. In these fluvial systems, you do have the rotation, the secondary cell, the outer band is deeper, and you do have that kind of respiration. Towards the outer band, near the surface, or towards the inner band, near the bed. That's the typical textbook secondary cell. And how deep is in the outer bank. However, in certain conditions where the hydrodynamic changes, like in tidal meanders or in submarine meandering channels, you do have sometimes rotations that are the opposite. And you may have different deposition erosion patterns in the cross section, and you may have changes on the scour hull. That's true. But in the fluvial, typical, the ones that I'm showing you today, no, that's not happening unless you have bedrock that is just giving you that condition temporarily. But no, in these cases, no, you don't have that.
Well, Jorge, finally, I want to thank you again for this amazing and interesting presentation. And thank you everyone for attending this second session of PIA webinar series. We are going to wait for you the next month in the next conference in charge of Edgardo Latruves, who is going to present us a general vision of the dynamics, including the human interference in the evolution of the river of the Amazonian basin. So thank you, Jorge, an amazing presentation, very nice, very illustrative. You are doing a very good job there. So now, thank you, and I hope to see you again with new presentation and new topics.
Thank you all. Nos vemos.
Thank you, everyone. See you next month. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Juan Camilo and Jorge, for your special intervention, and all the participants for joining us in this session of Cátedra Europa. We invite you to support the education of more talented young people through our campaign Más Becas by logging into the New Norte store. We remind you to keep connected to Cátedra Europa Virtual. Good evening.
Verán, me siento muy ligado a este país. A los elementos racionales se los podría explicar. Cuánta potencialidad tiene, cuántos recursos, cuánto capital humano. Da igual, créanme. Lo que domina en mi vinculación con Colombia no es la razón, sino el sentimiento. Así que pase lo que pase, y a veces tengo disgustos, lo que quieran, disgustos de compatriota, pase lo que pase, seguiré vinculado sentimentalmente a Colombia hasta que me muera. Gracias.
El 6 de marzo nos visitó el expresidente español Felipe González en una conferencia inolvidable. Con su presentación anticipamos lo que sería una programación de lujo, con España como país invitado. Ahora, en medio de la distancia física, pero aprovechando al máximo los recursos tecnológicos de nuestra universidad, damos continuidad a los más de 70 eventos y 250 conferencistas de nuestra cita anual con Europa. Esta es la Cátedra Europa 2020. Porque nuestros planes continúan, Europa se vive en el Caribe colombiano.